This meeting is being live streamed. Got it. This meeting is being live streamed. Got it. Okay, so this now means that I need to mute on my YouTube side so that we're not getting super weird echoes on through my computer. And I'm gonna check the sound quality from my other schmancy device because I want to make sure that all of you fine listeners and watchers out there can really hear what Benebell has to say, because let's be honest, that's why we're waking up at 10 in the morning to, be here live chatting, is to listen to Benebell.
Or to hear Kate and Benebell chat.
There we go.
More specific.
Delightful. And it looks like we are working in the fashion that we are supposed to be working. Delightful. I love it when technology works on the first go round.
Exactly.
So good morning, everybody, or to whomever joins and watches this a little later. My name is Kate Mira with grouptarot.com, and I am so excited to be spending my morning and drinking some nettle tea here, chatting with Benebell. Good morning, Benebell.
Good morning, Kate. How are you?
I'm excited to ask you a couple questions about
please do.
Your Spirit Keepers tarot. So for anybody who doesn't know Benebell, and I cannot imagine that anybody tuning into this particular conversation is new to Benebell, but just in case you are, she is a prolific deck creator, amazing researcher, and I have her third edition, Revelations of the Spirit Keepers Tarot. And one of the things that I was captivated by in this deck are,
the Maya numerals. I don't know
the camera is not good enough to show, but at the bottom of all of the cards are I Ching and Maya numerals. And I was trying to find out more about the Maya numerals, and I was not having much luck. And so I would love to hear you share anything that you can about the Maya numerals, and if I'm missing where.
Way back, way back.
Way back. Okay.
Yeah, I have some, because I don't personally know a lot. I'm definitely no expert. So instead, what I did was reference and give citations to some of the sources where I got the material, and you can go look for yourself if people are interested in deep diving more. I also have a couple of archaeological artifacts in the back that show where some of the original works that we found the Maya numerals in. Those are some of the later stuff. And by later, I mean, I think 16th and 17th century manuscripts that were actually, I think they were done by the conquistadors. So it's not first voices, but they were copying from what they were seeing over there.
So that is is there more?
Right there. So it's really cool how they're one of the first civilizations with zero. We don't credit them for having devised zero. Usually zero we think of as the Arabic invention. So it's really interesting to see that as well. But it's more mathematics oriented. We found them in their astronomical or astrological calendars. And so what I did here, though, was use the Maya numeral system to designate the numerical correspondences for the cards per the Golden Dawn system. So for those who like to do the open the key, or you do forms of card counting when you do divination, you can look at the Maya numerals. The bar is 5, and the dot is 1. So, it's very easy. Even if you don't know the numerals, every time you see a bar, 5, you see 2 dots over it, 5 plus 2, 7. So that's how I did it. That way, if I want to do card counting, I can look at the Maya numerals instead of an Arabic or Roman numeral.
And so what made you what inspired you to include Maya numerals in this deck?
I always use card counting. So card counting is a huge part of the way I do divination. And so I wanted to have the numbers because it's not the same for example, the pips are, if it's the 4 of swords, the number is 4. But I think for the court cards, I remember it was pages are 7. And then the other courts, kings, queens, and knights are 4. And then the majors, you have like 9, 12, and a 3 prime. So there's a little bit different. Aces are 11. And so to have the number there, it's easy I don't have to memorize anything. I can just see the number and I know exactly the numerological designation for that card when I do divination. And then I was like, well, you can use Roman numerals, you can use Arabic, but then I decided to go with the Maya.
And I don't think I've ever done card counting before.
New to you, fun.
Yeah, new to me. Can you talk a little more about that?
I don't know too much myself. I know it's part of a lot of the divination systems that you'll find written in the texts from the late 1800s, early 1900s. So for example, if you pull a card, let's say I pull, the Seeger, I pulled the key 0. So this card corresponds with 3 because it's one of the 3 primes. So let's say I have the deck. What's the next card you want to pull? Like, for example, you're doing a spread, and the first card you pull is this. What's the second card you pull? Instead of pulling from the top, which is what most people do today, you see that this is 3. So I count 1, 2, 3, and then the second card in my reading will be the third card. So this is a page, the Herald of the Flame. Pages are 7s. So, instead of pulling the next card, I count 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I pull the 7th card. So that's how you draw a spread.
Delightful. Okay. So I pulled the Emperor, which I can't say that there is much surprise there. This is one of my signifier cards.
So Zodiac, so that should be 12, right?
Yeah, great memory. Okay, so then I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then the 12th card, 8 of orbs.
Muisca shaman in training.
Ooh.
And the god of the sun and the goddess of the moon.
I just love your artwork. Like,
oh, thank you.
I love your artwork so much. I don't remember. I started following you after we met at the first StarCon, I think. And it was my sweetie who got me all of this juiciness for winter solstice last year. And I can just look and get lost in your art.
Thank you.
It's so luscious. And I love how you pull in global communities and deep ancient history in such a beautiful, cohesive way.
Like the Emperor card, Menelik I, the son of King of Solomon and the King Solomon and Queen of Sheba.
And the fact that you just remember all of this.
Sort of. Some I still remember. That one, I like that story because it's the Ark of the Covenant. There's the theory that Menelik I is the one who brought the Ark of the Covenant from Jerusalem down to Ethiopia. And so the Ark is now purportedly to be housed in Ethiopia.
Delightful. And I don't know if my camera is good enough, but you can actually see the Ark.
Yeah.
Back there in the distance a little bit. How do you, because one of the things that I appreciate about your work so much is that you pull from so many ancient cultures. Since you are giving yourself with your deck creation such a or with this particular deck creation, because the one you're working on right now, the Attila, is a little different, but like, how do you decide which pieces of world history end up in these cards?
Well, I don't go about it too rationally. It's more of an intuitive, what do I want to explore next? And then when I do explore that civilization, I try to make it a very immersive experience. So even in terms of so all of the media I consume during that time period that I'm working on the card from that culture, I only consume media, like documentaries about that culture. I look up recipes from that time and place, and I eat foods and cuisines, and I try to cook with the spices of that culture. I feel like the spices that are go-to spices in the culinary arts says a lot about the culture, if you think about just how we cook and how we live. And so I think working with the spices of a civilization is very important. And so that's something that's how I did it, at least.
I love that. What are some of the spices that are any of the spices that you started cooking with in the creation of this deck ones that are now like normal parts of your diet?
You know what's funny is I've always loved exploring food. So there weren't that many new spices, because the ones that were quote unquote new, I couldn't even get a hold of. So I tried to work within what I was able to have, I guess. Turmeric I use more of now. I think before I didn't know how to use turmeric, except for when the recipe called for turmeric in certain forms of curries, right? But now I can actually kind of cook intuitively with turmeric. Even if I'm just making vegetables, I can just put it in, even though I'm not cooking a particular cuisine style. So that's something that it's new, I guess.
I love putting turmeric in tea.
Yes.
I'll do like a ginger. What I'm drinking right now is nettle that I wild crafted with my friend Amber.
Nice.
I was looking at my jar as I was making it this morning, and I'm like, oh, definitely got to go wild crafting this spring. I'm down to that much nettle. I'm like, and what I had has lasted. What she and I wild crafted last time lasted me 2 years. So like I've been very good on my sustainability of wild crafting, but I'm like, okay, this is
Galangal actually is one of the spices that I haven't used before.
Say that name again.
Galangal, it's ginger-ish. That's the best I can think of. Like it's ginger-ish, but I've always used ginger. That's sort of the cuisine, the herb that I use. So I learned to use galangal instead of ginger. Galangal is more Southeast Asian and South Asian. Ginger you see more in East Asian cuisine.
And would I be able to find galangal? I have a lot of Vietnamese markets near me, so I could find that up at like Hung Fat sort of thing.
Yes, Vietnamese, Thai, Cambodian, you should be able to find. Laotian, you should be able to find.
Sweet. Say that name one more time for me.
Galangal. I think the spelling is Galangal.
Galangal. Does it sort of does it come in like a root form?
Yeah, it's a root. Yeah, it's a root. Or you can buy it in powder, but I don't suggest the powder. I don't like it. So just get the root, and then you can just use the grater.
I definitely have that. Yeah, because that's what I'll do with ginger. I've never actually bought a turmeric root, but that's just because I don't see them organic at my grocery store very often, and I can get the organic powdered like really easily. But one of my winter go-tos is just grated ginger and turmeric and honey and lemon all winter long.
Helps the immune system. That's actually very, very traditional Chinese medicine of you.
Well, thank you. I have had some very good acupuncturists and some very good traditional Chinese medicine people in my life. Although, like, anything that I happen to do is because I've listened to them. Like, I'm a theater artist and tarot reader.
Yes, I know. We chatted at Nudes.
How like and feel free to like feel free to like toss in questions of your own, or like things that you really feel like talking about this morning. But how did you first get started? Like, because for me, with Newts and the professional tarot community, I've been reading professionally for, although like nowhere near full time or anything like that, but I'd been reading professionally for almost 20 years before I found out about the Northwest Tarot Symposium pre COVID. And I was a little like, oh, this sounds amazing. And I'm like not sure at the same time. And so I had like, I went to my first Newts feeling good about it because I had a chat with the organizers, and I'm like, okay, like all of this feels really good and on the up and up, and I feel good about, giving my money to these people in this organization. And I had no idea that there was like this fantastically robust professional tarot community out there that I did not even know that I was missing. And so how did you what was your entry point into this world?
I was actually blogging anonymously as tarotanalysis.wordpress.com, something like that. Not even like my own .com, right? Like WordPress, one of those free services. And I was blogging about the tarot since my undergrad college years, but nobody gave a swat what I thought, right? And so I could write whatever, I could get quote unquote controversial, and like I would get all likes because there like 5 people were reading it and all 5 people were your close friends. So of course they love everything you write, right? So I thought I was brilliant, and then the Holistic Tarot, the book came out, and then suddenly it just for me, it felt like it was a little bit overnight, where suddenly eyes were on the work that I was doing. You got a little bit more scrutiny, as you should, right? But then suddenly it was a very different stage. The platform, the audience, everything was very different. And that's kind of when it opened up, like, oh, there are other tarot readers out there. There's like the American Tarot Association was big at the time, the Tarot Certification Board of America. It had all these eclectic tarot was going strong. And the thing is, the same community was part of all of these organizations. And so you kind of got to know this network of people. And then they had the in-person tarot conferences. And so you started meeting the people in person. And that's how I got introduced to the community. And of course, certain people really, initiated me in. Jamie Alford was one of the first people I really remember being very warm and inviting. Mary Greer as well.
Jamie Alford and Mary Greer, it's interesting that you bring both of them up, because the reason why I attended Newts for the first time was because of Mary Greer, but not because of her tarot work. I actually had no idea that she had written books on tarot. Really? Because I learned tarot through I learned tarot primarily through self-study and through tutelage with a fantastic witch and the high priest of one of my Chicago circles for a long time, Matthew Ellenwood. And so I didn't go the route of like reading Rachel Pollack's books on tarot and reading Mary K. Greer's books on tarot. And while I'm like, and my experience on Jung comes more from theater work and archetypes. And when somebody else brought it up in terms of tarot, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. But I had read Mary's Women of the Golden Dawn, Rebels and Priestesses, and was like, I have to turn this into a theater piece. I don't know how that's gonna look yet, but I have to turn this into a theater piece. And then it was, as synchronicities line up, it was in the next few days that I saw, Mary K. Greer is coming to town, and she's going to be a keynote speaker at this thing called the Northwest Tarot Symposium. Well, this is combining some of my favorite things let me go and like, and at the worst case scenario, it's not a very great conference, but I meet Mary and start the ball rolling and see if I can get her blessing on this theater dream I have. And best case scenario, it turned out to be fabulous. And I met amazing people like you as well. And Jamie Elford.
Mhm.
So. Trying to think if I have any more specific questions about Spirit Keepers deck, because the big one for me was the Maya numerology. And I guess part of it was like I had found that the place that I held up in the camera, but I guess I just thought or hoped that there was more than that one little page. And I guess what I'm hearing from you is that that is what there is.
There might be more. I don't know if it's explained in First Voices, but I do know you have a lot of scholars after the fact that go in with their theories and talk about what they think the Maya numerology system was all about. So you can read scholarly theories that came after the fact, but in terms of own voices, I don't know how much source material there is. What we do have are just a lot of the artifacts that feature it. You have the carvings, you have it that feature that, and then you just have to kind of use context clues. It's pretty clear that it had to do with astrology, right? And mathematics as well, because they did have a very sophisticated mathematical system. And so that's probably where it came from. I wanted to use it because it's really easy. You don't really have to memorize anything. The 5 is bar, like I said, the number, the ones or the units is the dot. And so I think as long as you learn that, it's very quick to pick up what the symbol is in the corner. And aesthetically, I think it looks better than an Arabic number in the corner of your card, right? So.
That's fair. Yeah, there's something because it is a system that we don't use in our day-to-day. There's a mystery to it. There's a specialness to it. It makes me want to it makes me both wish that I had this when I was down in Belize, because the part of Belize that I was in was what had a very strong Maya population. And one of the places that I visited, or I was helping a friend move, so we didn't do a whole lot of exploring the land and exploring the culture, but one of the places that we at least passed by, I can't remember if we actually stopped there or not, was a women's collective. And I feel like they would have been great people to ask about this.
There are Brahmi numerals in the Archangel cards. So the 4 Archangel cards, the kings, have that magic square. And so instead of using numbers that we might be more familiar with, I ended up going with Brahmi numerals. The reason I didn't use Brahmi numerals for the card counting designation in the corners of the cards is because I think that's harder to learn. You would actually have to know what the numbers mean, just like Chinese symbols for or glyphs for ideograms for the numbers. If you don't know it, you don't know it.
Totally.
But then with the Maya, I just felt like it's simple, right? It's such a logical system. I'm like, why doesn't everyone use this system? It's so logical.
It's so logical, like logical, easy to hang your hat on.
Yep.
So to speak. I was trying. Which cards did you would
archangels? So these are the shields. Oh, find. So for example, here is the King of Orbs, the Archangel of Mysteries, and you have the magic square corresponding with the element of earth. So it would be the Archangel. This is from Arabic grimoires. And what you would do is use these to invoke, or they're part of rituals that invoke the archangel that you would correspond with Earth. This one happens to be the Archangel Gabriel. And then instead of using regular numbers, I end up going with Brahmi numerals to designate the numbers.
Nice. I thought Uriel was the Archangel of Earth. Am I misremembering?
It depends who you go with. Like, it's really like there's so many different systems. I think in an older edition of the Book of Maps, I do talk about that. And then like if it's Jewish, Christian, or Islamic based, it changes as well. And so it really depends on who you're going with, which system you're working with. The Uriel sometimes is fire, but then you're right. Sometimes it's, it really depends on the system.
Fascinating. My knowledge, I don't know if knowledge is quite the right word. My reading and small exploration of such things also comes from Matthew Ellenwood and our circle in Chicago, and Michael Craig's. I'm like scanning my bookshelf right now.
Oh, Donald Michael Craig, right?
Donald Michael Craig's books, which are not popping out at me. Oh, there it is. Modern Magic is my main reading on that, which is,
I think that would be Golden Dawn Israel Regardi correspondences for the four archangels. I think that would probably be where the source would be that.
Yeah. Well, we had never actually said how much time you wanted to chat for. So I found one.
Oh, one of the Templars.
Angel of Storm and Battles.
Funny that you picked that card. So that card expresses another theory for where the Ark of the Covenant went, which is, this is the more popular theory you find in the West, that the Templars found the Grail and the Ark of the Covenant when they went to Jerusalem. Remember, Friday, October the 13th, Friday the 13th, that comes from that day in France when King Philip IV hung all of the Templars. And that was when what do they call? I can't remember what they call the head Templar. What's the head Templar called? I forgot. And then when he was being hung, he, according to urban legend, he uttered a curse. He said, "May those who caused this die, or may tragedy befall them within a year and a day." And then both the Pope and the King died within a year and a day of the death of that Templar.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then if you go into the astrology of it was October 13th, 1307, something. Like the astrology for that day, Venus, it's just so interesting. All of these synchronicities line up in ways that, I don't know, it's just really interesting to me.
Oh my gosh. I like the amount of research that you do. I think I would fall into rabbit holes and never want to come out. Like, one of the reasons why I love doing theater is the dramaturgy of it. And it seems like you have something super similar in terms of the research and the immersion that you do for your decks. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. Even in terms, and I try to look at it as multifaceted as possible. So it's not just the intellectual rigor, the academics of it, and having to look up your sources and read and research, but also the less tangible aspects of it, path working. I'm really trying to connect. And I also do astrology, looking into the astrological correspondences of certain dates and what's happening around the world on certain dates. So a certain date or a certain astronomical event. I think one of them was the birth of a supernova. It was in the 1300s. And then so what I did was look at all parts of the world, what was happening when there was that birth of the supernova, and what did different astronomers from different cultures, how do they interpret it? And so that's integrated into the deck as well.
Hmm. Was there anything that like you learned that super surprised you in the researching of this?
Um, I don't think it's not so much that it surprised me as it was affirming, which is that even though the outer shell of our various traditions are absolutely unique and distinct, there's some essence to it that's very similar. The concept of the Trinity, the concept of, an upper world, our world, and a lower underworld, and just how we conceptualize soul and spirit. There's something so universal to it that it's hard not to confront that there might be some universal truth there. There might be something there. And I don't know if everyone agrees with that, but I really love seeing that common denominator. And one of the values of seeing a common denominator is you feel closer to cultures that you might otherwise feel unfamiliar with. When you feel there's an unfamiliarity, it's easy to objectify, it's easy to not value. And when you see yourself in others, the good part about that sense of, seeing yourself in others is the benefit is that you see them as, God forbid, people, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So I
that
think there is value to that universality.
completely. Mm. It's reminding me of the I think it's called familiarity
Mhm.
bias.
Yes, the
And
familiarity bias.
so so hearing that, it's kind of like, well, one of the ways to help fix that in the world is make globalism more familiar with everybody. And then I have this thought and I'm like, yeah, but then you get really close into appropriation, and lots of my people are not very good about like keeping the being respectful as opposed to appropriative. And
It's the question of assimilation versus integration. I think for a long time, we talked about the melting pot theory. I think in the 80s and 90s, we wanted the melting pot. And then we realized, oh, that doesn't really work because melting pot assimilation causes erasure.
yeah,
Whenever you do that, the dominant majority becomes the visible icon, and then the minority is always erased. So
yeah,
we've learned that
totally.
integration is probably a better approach.
Completely. I always liked a stew metaphor more than melting pot because we want to retain our carrotness and our celery-ness and our onion-ness and whatever protein-ness, but we all want to be softened and informed by all of the flavors of the other and create something delicious with it, where we're still each holding our unique selves and ancestry and ethnobiographies. Mm-hmm. Well, my friend, is there anything else that you would like to share or talk about in closing?
Not really. The second print run is now open for pre-orders. There will be no major changes to the artwork. So the artwork will stay the same. The content of the book of maps remains the same as well. But I think I'm going to be changing the card back design, changing the packaging. So some of the surface level stuff will change, just to make it a little bit more streamlined and improved. But the substance is going to be exactly what you see on screen from Kate.
Delightful and
The eye of God.
so many layers. Which, and you might not remember this off the top of your head, and I have the book, so I can find out. But which double-headed axe is that? Do you happen to remember?
Oh, there's actually a lot. So the double-headed axe, it's associated with many different cultures' divinity of destruction, but it's the destruction in order so you can rebuild. And there's many different cultures that's associated with, which is why I decided to go with the axe. and there's blood. One of the little details I put on there was there's blood because it's also your axe. It's the idea of you are the one who's going to, you see that you've built something that, you know, is not correct for you. So you have to be willing to destroy it. You can't be too precious about the things you've created, especially if it was created born out of ego, and it's not something that is for your own greater good. You are the one who needs to consent to breaking it down and rebuilding. So the blood in the corner is also to symbolize that this is not your first rodeo. Like whoever is holding the axe has done this before. It's this idea of reincarnation, recycling, history repeats itself. And so that's why
the double-headed axe was one of the first religious symbols that I was exposed to outside of Christian symbolism, because my mom has a double-headed axe that hung, and still does, in fact, hang on their wall in New Mexico. And I want to say that they picked it up either in Greece or in Crete on a visit. It's a replica. It's not anything from antiquity, but I remember asking my mom about it when I was a kid, because my parents are both very Christian. My dad's Roman Catholic. My mom's a disciple of Christ. I'm a witch. We're a lovely little
nice.
But I remember what she had told me was that it was from that her double-headed axe had some tie-in with female warriors, and as I said, I can't remember if it was from Greece or Crete or somewhere else in the Mediterranean region, but I know they went to Greece. Like, we have tons of photos of that. My mother might watch this video later and be like, "Why is there's a correction?" I'm like, okay, I'll put it in the comments. Yeah, so seeing that makes me remember that story of my mom's.
Very cool.
Were your parents artists in any way, or does this love of art and creation come up from a wellspring of your own?
My father, professionally and in terms of his education and upbringing, he's a scientist, but he's also, in terms of his personal interests and hobbies, he's a phenomenal artist. All of his family members, everyone would always talk about how he was just incredibly talented at art. He can draw anything, he paints, like he's just really, really artistic, but he didn't ever do anything professionally or even in terms of a project with it.
Do you think you ever might collaborate with your dad on something?
I don't think so. I don't think he sees art as something that he would, he uses his art to do architecture and to do design and to do blueprints and CAD drawings. I think that's more his application of his art.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
That like a beautiful CAD drawing, like my set carpenter side is like, oh yes, like give me a beautiful CAD drawing. So
so with CAD, I have a funny personal story. I filed for a design patent of different life, a while back. So I created my own patent. And so how for the design patent application, everyone uses CAD drawings, but at the time I didn't know anything about digital programs at all. So I did all of my technical drawings for my patent by hand. So I drew the grid, and then, I drew the grid, and then I drew every single technical drawing, all the different sides of the invention by hand, and I submitted it. And then the patent examiner also made a side reference. So this is my, I've been doing this for 20 years, and this is the first time in over a decade, I've seen a hand drawn patent application, because everyone uses CAD now.
I love that you did it by hand. That's fantastic.
100% by hand.
I love that. I love that. I am going to check the chat.
Oh, correct. There might be questions.
There might be
You should
questions.
answer.
And I am not seeing anything there, and I'm going to double check here. I'm going to double check on my other device because sometimes I have found that things are that I see chat things rather on one device more than I do on the other. I don't really know why that is. So watchers, if you have any questions, toss them in the chat.
Are you going
Probably
to
should have
be
said that
presenting
earlier.
at Newts in the future?
What was that about newts?
Will you be presenting at Newts in the future?
I hope so.
Awesome.
I hope so. Yeah, I haven't shared the tarot show at Newts yet. I have at StarCon, but not at Newts. And I'm really loving the embodied tarot work that I'm doing right now. And there's so much excellent work in my experience at the conventions of um, all of the different book learning, all of the training your intuition and like the research and such. And I love all of that. And I'm a kinesthetic learner. As you can tell in this video, I move a lot. And I did that even before I was a performer. And so I have yet to see, because I'm still, Newt's 2019 or 2018 was my first time in the big circuit. So I still in many ways feel like I'm finding the flow there. But I have I want more of the physical work. I
can't remember her last name, Jennifer, and I don't even know if Jennifer is the first name, but there is, I think it was called Dance Arcana or Arcana Dance, where there's one creator who does combine, she's a dancer by trade, and so she combines dance with the cards of the tarot and showing how movements, I don't know all of it, but I do know she combines dance and the tarot, especially with major arcana. And so she does these rituals and retreats and courses where you can learn to choreograph dances through the tarot cards. Joanna Howell Colbert, I know she did a workshop once where she wanted, you would pull cards into a reading and you would physically mimic the the demeanor or the whatever the people are doing in the different cards. You would physically embody those movements and those positions and try to feel like you're in that first person perspective of the cards. So there's some work there, but I think there's a lot that you could definitely expand on. And I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I have thank you. I've really been enjoying the moving through the majors and moving through the minors classes that I've been teaching, which sound like they're in the same vein as the person that you just talked about. And I started initially thinking about it. One of the classes I took at Newts, and I can see her, and I cannot remember her name in this moment. And part of that is because I follow her on social media, and she has changed her name a couple times, which is a beautiful thing because it very much follows her journey. And the class that she did was on combining yoga poses and
Oh,
tarot. And so I was like, I'm there. Like anything that actually gets me to move my body in um alignment with this work, I am all for.
that's very
And
cool.
yeah, and it was a lovely class. Um, I haven't seen her back yet. But yeah. Um, and I just got um a new to me book, but it was published quite a good few years ago, that looks at a bunch of different Spolin and improv exercises to um, explore tarot with. And part of that is also in like not just personal research, because like where theater and tarot intersect, I find fascinating, but also to look at the books out there that are both similar and different to the group tarot
Mhm.
book that
Mhm.
I'm working on. And this was one of the ones that was recommended to me from a couple of different places, of like, take a look at this, take a look at this one. It might be similar to what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, great.
I
Would love
believe
to know that.
theater heavily influenced Pamela Coleman Smith's art of the RWS.
Did you take the workshop at this past Newts, where they were talking about the um, role of theater, of like Pixie's theater background?
I didn't take any courses at News, but I have a whole bunch of books on it. So that's the
Uh,
reason I got that information.
it made me so happy. I was like, yes, talk more about the theater, talk more about the Lyceum group, talk like I have dreams one day doing a um doing a trip over to England and
Oh,
going
Mary
to.
Greer does a retreat. She does something like that.
She does?
Yeah, well, she did. I don't know if it's still going on post-COVID, but pre-COVID, I remember she did take people over to the UK, and it was a tour of certain locations that were historically relevant. I believe they visited her final resting place.
Do you know
Um,
if they visited Ellen Terry's?
I don't know the exact places, but I mean, if Mary is, orchestrating it, I'm sure it's a very comprehensive trip. And I know they did seances as well. So I just remember that was the part that was most distinct in my memory, is that they endeavored for a seance. So I
Oh
was
my
like, oh
gosh.
my God, that's so cool.
I hope, Mary, if you watch this, please do that again in the future. I very much would like to go. Please and thank you.
I don't think you're the only one. I think she can definitely find a very um
But
interested group to go.
yeah. Yeah. Yes, please. um mm, this has just been so delightful.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for being willing to spend some Sunday morning. I am not seeing, I have not seen anything pop into the chat, question wise. So, is there anything that you would like to close on?
I enjoyed my time here with you and learning more about what you do here. So thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. Uh, you can follow Benebell on Instagram, on YouTube, your website. And if they want to pre-order the second printing of Spirit Keepers Tarot Revelation Edition, they do that on your website?
That's correct.
Awesome. Well, have a beautiful rest of your day, friends. And I don't actually know I don't know if I can just end the stream and chat with you, Benebell, after. It might be that when the stream ends, this all closes. And if that happens, thank you so much for
Thank you so
carving
much.
out some time
Oh, it was my
to.
pleasure.
And now let's see how technology finishes this.